Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Jody Lynn, I don't know if you knew this, but David was a co-host here on the show for about half a year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He was on here for half a year. And we had a half a year of the stream of David and David himself and some really, really cool times. And then he's been doing, reprises ever since then, coming back to do visits and sharing stuff and so forth. But for me, it feels like old times because not only do I have my present co-host, Jody Lynn Craven, but I also have past co-host, David Strickel, all on the stage at the same time. This is fun. Yeah. I love this.
Always fun being here.
Yeah, well, that's great. And David, we got to congratulate you. I mean, how many times did you come on to the show and say, I almost have the book ready. We just have to do some fixes to it.
we just need to rewrite it for the third or fourth time.
Yeah, right.
Which we did, and I'm very, very happy with the outcome. And we've got really good early feedback on it. We published on December 1st officially.
Woohoo!
Really, really good feedback. So all the time that went into it was worth the wait, I believe.
And congratulations to Kat too, because Kat did a fabulous job as your co-writer.
She
did. Just really, really, really good.
Yeah, and this time in the first book she was the editor. In this book she's a co-author because she's asking questions of the stream. She did a lot of editing. I'm dyslexic, so I need a lot of editing. So she did all the editing. So she knows how to edit without taking the stream, especially when I'm channeling. She doesn't change what's offered, but she just cleans up my,
right.
Especially when I'm channeling and typing. Oh gosh, it's really crazy.
Well, she makes you look good. That's what the author, the ghost author's job is. Well, she's not more than a ghost author because she's a co-author, but that's what the co-author's job is. Yeah.
Yep. And she is a co-founder of our publishing brand, Streaming Words Publishing.
Ooh.
Very cool.
We're in business together now, and we will be publishing other TYA-centric, stream-centric books and kind of start a brand, kind of like a Hay House type, brand of our own. Do our own thing.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
She has a lot of publishing experience, so why not tap into that and harness
Absolutely. That? Yeah. She definitely knows her stuff too. And she knows marketing too. So you got the whole package right there.
Indeed.
So that's really, really good. Yeah. So, all right. I know that we've talked about it in the past. We've certainly talked about the TYA and the TYA practice and so forth in the past, but now we got the book called The TYA Practice. So give people like a brief introduction. Let's assume that there are people, because there probably are, people who are listening who have not actually heard much about TYA. They need to know something about it. And of course, that's what the book is all about. So give people a little intro on the book.
Certainly. Well, the TYA practice is something that I created for myself. I have understood law of attraction my whole life. I understood it when I was a child, that even though I was growing up poor and in really kind of dire conditions sometimes, that I could actually make things happen. And so I used that and misused that at times and kind of went through a whole progression with my journey with law of attraction and attracting abundance and really focused on material wealth and abundance, as everybody that knows me knows, for the first 20 years or so of my adult life, and then got to a place where I realized that, okay, this stuff is great, but it's not everything. I need to be happy. I need to love myself. I need to experience joy. I'm still not mastering my emotions and all of this stuff. So how do I do that? And so I went even more inward for clarity around that, because there's so much information out there that it just gets really confusing. When there's lots of different ideas and things like that, I sort of shut down and think, okay, they can't all be right. What is this? And that's when I really went into the study of belief systems. And I realized that, gosh, all belief systems are our own creation from our ego consciousness. Right. Source is source. Source is appreciation of all that is. And that's it. So how do we operate as a human being in a belief system? Why can't I just create a belief system that strips away all of the religious and ego-created stuff and really align a belief system with universal law? And what is that? So that's where TYA came from. And TYA stands for Trust Your Abundance, because what it really boiled down to, if you want to take something down to one word in the English language, I discovered that the most important thing was trust. Learning to let go of your ego and fear and all of the twists and turns that you manifest for yourself through vibrational flow, which we talk about all the time, and return to trusting your abundance. And it shows up when you do. And I prove that every day in my own life. I share it when I don't trust, because we're all mercurial beings. We, fall out of trust sometimes. and then I share what happens when I return to trust and what happened, and the journey there. And so TYA is all about living a life that's aligned with source consciousness, but not all the time, and living a life that's aligned with universal law, which includes the law of attraction and the law of polarity. I have discovered that really everything really boils down to those two things. That yes, we create everything via our consciousness, but our consciousness is not static because we're in a polarized environment, meaning we're going up and down a vibrational spiral all the time. How do we get better and better and better as we move through life at managing that? And that's what TYA is all about.
Which is great.
And I guess I should flash the book if we're going to.
Yeah.
I'm still learning my finger placement. Like, where do I put my fingers not to cover up all the words? But this is the cover of the book. I love the cover. And it's not a pamphlet. I keep telling everybody, this isn't some pamphlet that's trying to get you to take some program. This is the whole shebang.
It's a book.
It's a thick one. All of it. It's a heavy, thick, big 475-page read, but it's a living workbook. I call it the TYA Bible, playfully, but there's no rules or judgment or deities or worship or anything like that or dogma. It's just universal law and how to apply it in your life. So
I love that. Yeah. By the way, one of the things that I really love that you and Kat did in the book is you put that glossary of terms right near the beginning. I mean, like years ago, I was taught that that's called part of the motto, MOTO, which stands for method of the organization. And it includes the terminology within an organization, because every organization has its own way of expressing things, of talking about things. And TYA exactly has that. I mean, it has its own phrases, up the spiral, down the spiral, all this other stuff that if you aren't part of it from the beginning, you don't know what it means.
You can feel alienated. Yeah, like, what is this guy talking about? Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we have a full glossary at the back, but the front of the book, we loaded up the things that right away when you're starting to, I didn't want people to have to stop reading and go to the back, like, what the
figure
hell
out what it was.
Yeah. Or have to push on the, to get the definition and all that sort of thing. I didn't want anyone to have to do that. So yeah, the terms we use throughout the book are right up front. So you can kind of start learning them.
Yeah. And once you learn them, I mean, they're actually easy. They're not difficult to understand. You just have to know what they mean. And once you do understand what they mean, they are great shortcuts, because each one of those terms is a shortcut to a larger concept. And when you have it boiled down to a little shortcut like that, you can kind of zip through pretty quickly. Here's what it's all about. And it makes sense quickly, rather than having to just explain in detail. Okay, this means this, which has that effect. But it can kind of get cumbersome after a while without that terminology. So the terminology actually
the use of fancy, flowery words and otherworldly type sounding things, it's sexy. I get it. But if you're confusing the reader, you're really not serving them.
Exactly.
I want to serve the reader. I want to teach the reader, if they're interested, this is how you systematically raise your vibration and live a better life, period. However, and let's get there the easiest way we possibly can. And if you need it to be sexier and, have these, need a lot of science, first of all, or if you need a lot of ethereal type things, you can do that, but that's not really what we're about. And the science of it is, here's a little tidbit, go apply it in your life and see what happens and come back for more. Do your own experimentation with this stuff.
Yeah, that's
prove
always
it to
important.
yourself.
Right. Yeah, because you're the one who's going to be the hardest sell. You're going to be your own hardest sell on anything that you're absorbing. So yeah, absolutely. Try it, test it, apply the scientific method. Now I haven't actually finished the whole book yet. I've gotten partway through it, but I'm curious. I get the feeling that there's a significant amount that tracks with the boot camp, which I don't even know what you call the boot camp anymore. I know you changed the name of it.
Oh, we started to call it something else, the TYA experience. I'm like, let's just call it boot camp. That's
it's
what
still
it is.
Boot camp. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's meant to kick your ass, and it will. So why not call it boot camp?
Yeah, well, and it does. It really does. Talk about coming face to face with your own demons. It happens really fast. In module 1, it happened for me. Like, okay, yeah, now I know I'm in the real deal. But nevertheless, it does have a fabulous track to it. But how closely or how far apart does the book track from the boot camp?
Well, it's not identical to boot camp, but we wrote the book based on what we learned teaching it in boot camp. And so there's nothing you get to the end, and certainly if you want to take boot camp or buy a guided meditation or do more stuff, that's back there. But this isn't you're going to read the book and then you have to take boot camp to get it. Okay, I know a lot of things are designed that way in our world, but I say bullshit makes the world go round. But I didn't want to be that. I wanted to authentically deliver. That's why I call it the TYA Bible, because I wanted to authentically deliver the TYA practice to someone. You can buy the book, you can read it, use it as a living workbook. never spend another dime on anything with us, and you will
Mhm.
get it. That was
Good.
my intention with this.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, that's
Well, that's
important.
beautiful, because that's not often that, that we see that in our world today. It's more like the opposite, like you were expressing. Buy this,
Yeah,
and then
it's
buy that.
yeah, it's
and
kind of
that.
like that. What we're all taught. If you've ever taken a course on how to create a business around this stuff, that's what
Mhm.
you're taught. I did. I took
Mhm.
I took a course, and I took the things that I wanted to utilize that were in alignment with what I was actually teaching,
Mhm.
and kept those things, and I stripped away everything else. I was taught you've got to agitate people. You've got to get them feeling their pain, and then you got to go in for the kill, and then you got to
Oh
get them
yeah,
to do
that's
your next thing, and your
traditional
next thing, and your next thing, and I
traditional
toyed
marketing
with.
right there.
Yeah, and I did all of that stuff, and I'm like, but this isn't in alignment with what I'm teaching. So
Mm.
how do I say that abundance is assured if you just release these things? Oh, it's only going to be assured if you continue to spend more money with us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That doesn't work. And what I proved to myself, miraculously, practicing what I teach, that my personal well-being and financial abundance and my lifestyle, whether my business is rocking like it did during the pandemic or whether it completely implodes like it did in 2021, my life's fine. I do practice what I teach. So I'm not desperate to get people into a program or anything like that, because I know that if the money's not flowing from one direction, it's going to flow from somewhere else.
Mhm.
So
Do you
that's
also
the
find do you also
but
find, David, that the, like, clientele, I don't know if we want to call the people who take your material or purchase your material, but because you have that philosophy of, I'm going to give you all of these things and not shackle you to buying this and this and this and this, that you've created a more clientele anyway who come back anyway because they just
oh,
love
sure.
you
Sure, there
so
are plenty of
much.
people that do that anyway that I don't have to push that. And I've gone through bringing in marketing people that wanted to push it and did, and saw what that did, and lost some credibility and followers. That was just part of my process of learning, and it
Mhm.
never felt right, and it was out of desperation. And then when I let go of the desperation, the people that really loved what we do, they hung around through it, and I appreciate that. And then new people showed up, and then, like I said, when the money stopped flowing in the stream business, it picked up elsewhere, and my life never missed a beat. I'm like, wow, I really am trusting my abundance, and it really is continuing to show up no matter what. So my mission is to share this practice with the world and not attach commerce to it at all. Yes, there's a price to, publish a book and do all that sort of that. Of course there is, but not attach it to, I need to have this as my income, because that's the kiss of death in something like this, as far as I'm concerned, because then it does become something that people just inherently have that weird vibe about. I can't trust this. I don't know. And if they don't give themselves fully to it as a belief system, it's not going to work the same. That's why
Mhm.
belief systems work so well. The devout believers of any belief system, whether it's a religion or whatever, yes, they're getting the benefit from it because they're trusting. No matter what the path is to that trust, they're trusting.
And by the way, in answer to the other part of your question, Jody Lynn, the TYA community is a really tight community, very active. A lot of people who are just continuously involved. I mean, I'm part of it. I sit more on the periphery. I kind of watch more than anything else. I'm not much of a participant anymore. I just kind of pay attention to what goes on. But I mean, there are people who are just like they're my God, if it was somebody who was really negative about TYA, they'd be saying that it was a cult because they're just so fanatical.
Oh,
You
sure.
know?
Yeah, when we had our live event in LA last year, I had a picture of 5 of us that had Taya. Can you see it? Taya
Oh yeah,
tattoos.
TYA
And
tattoos.
my partner
We were
Michael,
tatted TYA.
who's not a devout Taya, and I'm glad that he's not, but he's not, is into it. He says, "You're running a cult. You've got all these people with tattoos." Like, no, it's trust your abundance. The tattoo is about the mindset and the trust and the reminder, and the honoring the practice. It's not about me at all. But I
Mhm.
love that we were all there together and said, wow, there's 5 of us here with tattoos. Let's take this. I have to find that picture somewhere. It's really cool.
That
Yeah.
is cool.
You're not required to tattoo your body to be a Thai.
You're right. Well, that's really what the difference is. I mean, a cult, they do all kinds of ways to kind of coerce you into continuing to do it. You don't need that with TYA followers.
Yeah. Well, I was watching that Netflix. There's a Netflix on some sort of a
Twin
twin
flames.
flame. I
Yeah.
didn't finish it, but I started it. I'm like, God, I hope nobody ever looks at Thai and thinks. But really, the difference is that Katerina has been involved in a cult, so she's been
That's
on the
right. I
podcast.
forgot that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's had the most interesting life, and she's
She has an incredible
15
run,
years
life.
younger than
Oh,
me, and she's had the
jeez.
most interesting life. But she's been in a cult, or involved in a cult, I should say.
Mhm.
And we're doing a lot of things opposite of a cult. We are not. We are teaching you to appreciate your transgressors and
Mhm.
to build relationships with people that don't believe the way that you do, because
Mhm.
we don't need people to support our belief system.
Mhm.
Right.
And we don't need that dogma. We don't need to say this is the only way, because it's not. It's
Anything
a
too
chosen
based
belief
on
system.
yeah,
I'm sorry, go
what
ahead.
what you just said about the book, where you're giving all of the details, those cult like things or cults, you're always looking to the person that's above you to tell you what to do and how to act, and that you're doing the right thing. Like it sounds like with your book, and I'm excited to read it to confirm this, but I believe it to be true, that you're giving all of the details, saying, here, you can do it for yourself. Here's exactly what I did.
Yeah, we're making ourselves obsolete.
Yeah.
And that's happened. We've had lots of people come through boot camp that I don't hear from for years. They take it, they go live their lives, and I'll reconnect at some point, just check in with them. Oh, life's going great. I practice this every day.
Mhm.
My very first enrollee in boot camp from 2018, I didn't see or hear from her for a couple of years, and I was really concerned that we just lost touch. And then she showed up to the event in LA. Oh my God, it's changed my life. I'm so grateful to you. And of course, I'm bawling at that point hearing that. But you don't need to continue to follow the guru if the material is authentic. It should be something that you go and apply in your life. And then, yes, it's helpful to have a community and other people that understand how we operate, because most other people on the planet don't operate this way. So it's good to sort of have a base to go back to, but it's not to go be sequestered with a bunch of TYIsts and only do that. It really is go out and play in the world and experience any and everything you want to experience with these tools.
Not that the TYIsts, I love the term, by the way, TYIsts, that's a good term. But it's not like the TYIsts don't spend a lot of time reinforcing each other, because they do. I mean, that's also part of it.
And I think depending on who we are, some of us need that more than others. I love the TYA community. When I live in a very social resort, area in Southern California, and when I socialized more, I found myself, I want to talk about this stuff with you guys, vacations and cocktail parties, and did you get a new house or a new car or whatever? That's good for a few minutes for me, and then I really want to talk about the good juicy stuff in life. And I know I have to shut that down to function with people that aren't into this sort of thing, or they just think you're insane. But I love to geek out on this stuff. And
That's so funny. I just turned down a vacation that was like really a really smoking good deal, but the thought of having a bunch of the conversations that you were describing, surface level conversations where I can't really be myself or my full self, because they're just not into the same things, and that's okay. That's where they're at. I said no, I can't do that. I can't. My face can't pretend very well, so it's not going to
You're
go
not a poker
well.
player.
No, I'm not. No.
Yeah.
I'm a really
Well,
bad.
good. You know yourself. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and people that are really open-minded about things, these days we see hyperpolarity, especially around politics. And if they want to draw you into that discussion and you don't immediately take their side, then there's an issue. And when you tell my standard answer is, I don't give politics that much power in my life. Oh my God.
They'll start a fight right there.
Yes, people get so upset by that. Well, how can you not? You're part of the problem. And like, yeah, no, I don't believe that. But you go ahead with your beliefs. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's very entertaining to watch the results. So yeah, go ahead and create it.
Yeah.
But I actually had a conversation with somebody, a friend. I'm very much involved in the dance community here in Connecticut, and a woman I met in the dance community, I actually asked her out for a coffee so we could get to know each other better. And we had a really interesting experience, because it turns out she's also very spiritual. And I never knew that about her. And I say that because to me, it's an example of what kind of happens in the other direction. When you reach out and you start interacting with, like you were describing, the community at large, regardless of their belief system, I'm finding more and more people are appearing, kind of coming out of the woodwork. Like,
Well,
There are a whole
you're
lot of people.
also, you've really gone deep into this, so that's your vibe, and you're
Well,
attracting.
sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think about our house, and I will get into that in a minute. Our home burned down last December. We're
Right.
finally starting to build it back now, a year
Hooray.
later.
Okay, good.
We finally
Good.
got our permit. It almost took a year. But it's funny, when
Yay.
the book came out, I started thinking about all the people that wanted copies of the book. And I realized that the contractor, our interior designers, and there was some third person, all are into this stuff.
Yes.
They all listen to my podcast now. I'm like, how did we attract that? We hired them all separately
But that's
and
the
just
point.
found out later that they're all, oh, I love Abraham and I love Hay House. And oh, I didn't know. And now they listen to the podcast. They all wanted copies of the book. And it is interesting that we've assembled all these people, rebuilding our home, that are all into this stuff, because I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of
And,
people in that industry are not. So
and even more than that, I'm also finding, now this is also going to be law of attraction, but I'm also finding that I'm encountering a lot of people who don't necessarily know this stuff. But the really odd part is I get into conversation and I learn that they're doing the work anyway, even though they don't realize they're doing the work. My
Mm.
mind is still blown by that. But I think it's kind of like a description of what's going on a global basis. This kind of stuff is kind of infiltrating everybody, perhaps on a subconscious level, and they're starting to basically raise their own vibrations without realizing what they're
yeah.
doing.
Yeah, I think we're led there naturally, whether you know the labels and the terminology or not. I always joke, when I was 14, I thought I invented law of attraction.
I love that too.
I had no idea what it was called, but I remember thinking, God, I've got this cool thing. I told my brother about it. I got this cool thing that if I start dreaming of stuff, it just shows up. We were really poor, so it was, clothes and spending money and stuff like that, but something always was showing up for me. And then I just kept going with it and going with it and going with it.
Which is fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Well,
for
when
me, it's even more
you've got no other alternative,
well, yeah, well, that's true. Yeah,
when you're all the way at the
ground
bottom,
zero,
you've got nowhere to go
yeah,
but up. But a lot of people don't find their way out of that, unfortunately.
that's true.
Mhm.
Exactly. But that again, I think that's something that we're going to start seeing change on pretty quickly, because I'm seeing it throughout all strata of society. I mean, people from all walks of life, people I just encounter, kind of randomly. I get into a conversation. They're talking about how they're into yoga and they've been doing a meditation practice, and the meditation has led them to other stuff. I'm saying, like, do you know this stuff? They said, what are you talking about? I've never heard of any of that.
Yeah, and you don't even live in Southern California.
No, I know. I'm on the other coast entirely.
I know. I mean, it's everywhere where I live, of course. But yeah, that's really cool. But the stream has said many, many times that the vibration of Earth is shifting, and shifting more significantly than it has in the past, because of our
Right.
ability to communicate. And new beings enter the inner physical up to speed with the vibration they're entering in.
Right.
So that's why we see a younger generation coming of age now that is more open-minded and not polarized about things than we've ever seen before. And that's why, those of us that are older think, gosh, I couldn't imagine hearing about somebody not being a gender in high school,
Right.
And now, there's just all kinds of ideas and things that are really challenging the matrix. That I
Yeah.
know you're telling me I'm supposed to be this, but I'm not going to be that. And we also see more people born with quote unquote disabilities that aren't really disabilities. They're just variants of people that are coming to purposely disconnect from that matrix. And maybe they're labeled with, some syndrome or something that's considered a disability, but really they're just choosing to experience physical in a way that's not going to place them in the matrix, because they're just out of it.
Mhm.
Or they're choosing to redefine what the matrix means for themselves in a way that it becomes a lot less impactful. I think of my friend Joel Elston, who he basically describes his ADHD as his superpower. He has completely
Yeah.
flipped the concept around. He doesn't think about it as being a negative at all. He thinks of it as like, wow, this is like the best thing that could have happened to me. So
I say
directly
that
to your
about
point.
dyslexia and my parents, not really being active in my life, and being all those things were the best thing that happened to me. Being gay,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
made me question everything. I grew up in
Sure.
a religion that said who I was wrong, and so I had to in turn question the religion.
Mm.
And
Right.
my dyslexia, I didn't fit into school, so I had to educate myself in other ways.
Mhm.
And all of those things, gosh, they're all gifts. And I think we all have these gifts. And do we acknowledge them as gifts or not? That's the difference.
And I have to admit, there's a little piece of me that imagines David Strickel in school, and you described to us how you learned pretty early that you could attract things into your life. So starting at ground zero, you're attracting these things into your life. Your friends are seeing that, and they see this guy who has this dyslexia, and nothing seems to fit, and yet he's getting all this stuff coming to his life. They're saying, "What is he doing? Stealing it?"
Oh, sure.
I don't know what their conclusion was, but their whole brain.
Well, I drove the
was
teachers
thrown
crazy
off.
because my older brother, I lived in a small town, and my older brother was a straight A student, and I was not. And, I was, I always did well on standardized tests, but then I didn't do well in school. I was daydreaming all the time.
Okay.
And my mind was with the stream more often than not. And I just knew that I would be okay whether I had an education or not, a
Right.
formal
right.
education or not.
But I'm thinking
And
how others
proved that to
saw
be
that,
true.
though. People that you knew, your peers in school and so forth, because they probably looked at you askance, like, huh? How's that working?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they did. I remember most kids just thought I was a rich kid, except I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, on the wrong side of the tracks. But I drove a nice car, and as a teenager, I manifested all the stuff that you want as a teenager. I had a brand new
Yeah.
car, nice clothes, and a nice watch, and I almost always had money to do all the things that I wanted to do. So it was interesting, but there were times that stuff went away too, and that's in the first book. That was an interesting journey when I would manifest and demanifest and then manifest it all over again. It took me a few years to really, really trust. Like, wow,
Let's
I've done
talk
it
about
there
that
and I
trust.
did it here, but then it went away. So what's that curiosity is what really drove me to create all that.
So let's talk about trust. I mean, trust, like you said, is at the core of Trust Your Abundance, TYA. It's at the core of what you were learning. So let's just share some concepts here. Like, why do you find trust to be so important, and give us some stories to illustrate it?
Sure. Well, I talk about duality all the time, and that we are operating in this duality that I identify as one part source and one part ego, human consciousness. But we're all beings of source, so we all channel in our own way. And when we're at our best, we're channeling source. That's our creativity, our solving of things, our expansion of consciousness is all source. And then ego is about desires and about fear and judgment and all of those things that we pick up in the matrix, our human experience. And we're sort of always doing this balancing act of allowing more source, meaning we're detuning our ego and letting more source in, or we're doing the opposite. We're really letting the ego run wild. We're really playing in the matrix deeply, and we're sort of overshadowing our source consciousness. And the difference is that when you're operating in ego and disallowing source, you're recycling. You're not creating anything new. But that's not necessarily a bad thing or something that we're looking to totally eradicate, because when you allow your source to go down and your ego to go up, I forget which hand I was using for which.
The dyslexia has kicked in again. There we go.
It definitely does all the time. But when you allow more ego, thus overshadowing source, you're manifesting obstacles for yourself. And just like we were talking about all those gifts that we create, we create gifts in our spin out. Gosh, what a major gift the house burning down has been, just in learning and experiencing and experiencing a need to further allow patience in my life and things like that. I look at all the gifts that have come from that experience. So we go down our spiral vibrationally, we manifest obstacles, and then as soon as we go up our spiral, we solve the obstacles. Sometimes we spend a lifetime, though, never going up our spiral and judging the obstacle and being in that victim space. And that is something that I see. We talk about the younger generation that really wants to be outside the matrix. Something I do notice, though, is that they're outside the matrix. They're wanting to cut their own path. They don't want to be in corporate life. They don't want to necessarily have a formal education and be in debt forever for it. They don't want to, be a gender or a, sexual identity the way that they've been taught. But then they sort of turn back around in the lower vibration and create all of these identities, and then they're victimized by it. There's a lot of that, how dare you gender me? How dare you do this? And well, why do you care is what I say. Go be your thing and be confident in that and love yourself and just be who you are, and don't let that fear creep in. Hearing the governor of Florida saying that Florida's where woke goes to die. And yes, I can see how that would inspire fear. I was talking to somebody the other night whose sister is a teacher in Florida, and she quit. She quit teaching. Brilliant teacher. And she
Wow.
quit teaching. She says she just can't take it anymore, all these, crazy rules in the public school system. But, that's the reality that's being experienced. And if you are going to play outside the matrix, which is great, and then you allow fear to creep in and that's going to draw you right back into the matrix.
Yeah.
So I know I've gone way off on a tangent, as I always do, but that returning to trust. Oh, wait a minute. I know there's things out there that are designed to draw me back into the matrix. My government saying that who I am is wrong and is going to be outlawed in school, the certain expressions and things like that. And it draws you back in until you learn, and it's a personal journey to learn that, oh, wait a minute, if I always trust, I'm always going to be okay. And I'm in my 50s now. So I've been through enough of these, doomsday scenarios where I learned that if I choose not to give it power, it's not going to impact my life. I've been through recessions and wars, and, I was of draft age in the first, was it Persian Gulf? What was the first one in the early 90s? I was prime draft material. I wasn't in college. I was in my early 20s. The whole thing in Kuwait, I forget the name of it. Desert Storm.
Desert Storm, yeah, that's it.
And I just made peace with, hey, whatever unfolds here is what unfolds for me. And if we go to war and there becomes a draft and that's what happens, then that's what my experience is going to be. I'm not going to be fearful about this. And then with certain, presidents winning elections that weren't necessarily who I voted for, and seeing people around me really freak out, and just deciding, hey, I'm not going to give this power. I'm not giving this person any power. Then the big recession of 2008, I'm not giving that power. And never was I having a negative experience as a result of those things, because I chose not to give them power.
One of the most interesting aspects of my own experience with TYA, and by the way, I don't think you did go off on a tangent, because this all was about trust. I asked about trust, and you did the right thing. You showed us what trust is, but you also showed us what the other side, the not trusting side, is. So it's all part of the same soup in that sense. But in my own experience of dealing with my own up the spiral, down the spiral moments, I continue to be amazed how many different ways I'm able to go down the spiral. I mean, I really can see it now in a way that I never saw before. Also, because of what I learned in the boot camp, I also don't. I don't actually go down the spiral in the same sense. Does that make sense? I mean, I do go down, but
Well,
it's not
different.
like,
You're aware of what it's all about now.
Yeah,
So even when
yeah.
you're down there, you're like, I'm just down the spiral.
Yeah.
I'll be back up tomorrow, or as soon as I decide to. The thing now is I'll be back up as soon as I decide to be back up, and it can be instant.
Yeah.
It can be. And it
I
can
think
be.
what
I just had
I'm
to
trying to
spin out.
express is what I'm
with the
trying to
book.
express is that it's just kind of like an experience of, oh, I'm down the spiral again. Well, this is yucky. It's not, oh, I'm down the spiral. I
And I
can't
can't
believe
get up,
this is
and I'm
happening.
miscreating. I remember that term. I'm miscreating down here, down my spiral, and low
Right.
vibration. It's so terrible that I'm down here. Well, no, it's not. It's an experience that you're creating for yourself, and you've created that experience to provide a platform to create something new, which is your expansion of consciousness, which in my belief system is why we come to physical in the first place. That's what the stream says. You come to physical for the expansion of consciousness, not to live a life of perfection. There is no expansion of consciousness in an easy life of perfection. So why do you even want that? It's okay to want improvement. We all want to be comfortable and experience new things. And, that desire drives us, right? But that's still ego. That's a good part of it. The good part of our ego, in my opinion, is that part that drives us.
Sure.
And then the part that's more challenging is the part that still has that, I call it vibrational dust. No matter how much detuning you do, you have vibrational dust. But that's where I really geek out, is what's in the vibrational basement. What's lurking down there that I'm not aware of, that's dragging my vibe down all the time, that I get to experience and detune, and then never experience again if I detune it.
Yeah, that's the key. If you detune it, you don't have to experience it, and which really coincides with something I see a lot here on the show. We have guests who come through all the time. We have co-hosts as well who do similar kinds of things, but they go through what's commonly known as the dark night of the soul. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 of them, and then they come out the other side, and they've got some tools that help them get out the other side. They get so excited, and so they want to share the tools with the world. They become coaches and authors and course givers and all kinds of stuff like that, and it's great. It's wonderful. You see that whole pattern play out. You say, that's really, really cool. But what's also fascinating about it is 2 things. First, there are 2 really, really, really fascinating things. The first is they all, to a person, say, I am so appreciative of what I went through. I never want to do it again, but I learned from that more than anything else I've ever learned from in my life. So that's the first thing that comes out. The second one that comes out, and this is where it varies from person to person. Some of them, in the way they express themselves, demonstrate kind of what you're talking about. This idea that they're able to just let it be what it is. Okay, I'm down the spiral again. I can go up whenever I'm ready. No big deal. But there are others who still get hung up on being down the spiral, despite having gone through the experience and come through the other side. They're still hung up
No,
on
I
it.
love
So
it. It shows me
yeah,
exactly what's next to work on. We're
yeah.
works in progress until we depart physical. So
Mhm.
Yes.
what's next? My father died in September. We traveled back for the funeral. And Michael, my partner, is a psychologist, and he said, is anything going to, do you think anything's going to bubble up in this experience? I said, I don't know, but I can't wait for it to, so I can see what it is. Not much bubbled up. One little thing did, and I kind of cleared that immediately, and now it's completely gone. I'm like, wow, I really feel like I've completely detuned my father. And I work with a lot of people in boot camp, especially. Everyone's detuning parents.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
I know Freud went there way before me, but yes, your parents are your original transgressors. They're your original teachers. That's just natural. And everyone's detuning parents in some way. And maybe we don't fully detune parents until they cross over.
Mm.
Maybe not, because I thought I'd fully detuned my father. And sure enough, there was one little sticky thing that popped up. We cleared that out. And now I'm so at peace with the whole thing.
That's an
Uh,
interesting idea. I had never considered that possibility, but
Well,
that
and
is,
I'm not saying that's exactly how it is, but I
but
know that
it's worth thought. Yeah.
people for whom the parents have crossed over, the detuning is so much easier than
Yeah.
when they're still, down the street. We call those playfully, we call those active transgressors. I know it sounds like an active shooter, but
Yeah.
they're active transgressors in your life.
Uh, well,
Active
and
versus passive.
maybe it's until the moment that they depart, that some of that stuff is stuck in shadow, like in the basement, the deep dark basement. You didn't even see that it was there, or wasn't bugging you or whatever, but now they're gone. And so a lot of people experience when their parents leave or when somebody dies, this like feeling of loss that they can't do or say or whatever. So maybe that's a part of it too, is that it's final, like they're gone, the relationship is now over, if you will, in this physical way, so more is able to come back up.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's sort of like until that actually happens, you don't know what might be residing down there. But once you've dealt with that stuff, there's nothing new that's going to be created because their ego
Yeah.
has been released. They are pure positive source energy now.
Mhm.
And I did that with my mother a long time ago because I was not in her life. The last 20 years of her life, she disowned me.
Mm.
And so I did the detuning with her early, and then I went on to detune my father, and all of that was freed up. So very at peace with my mother. I've had her come in dream state and know how much I just fully appreciate her as she is now.
Mhm.
My father, I wasn't so sure because he was still alive. I went to visit him a couple of times over the past couple of years, and he was definitely declining. There was no moment with my father where I had the heart to heart. Oh my gosh, let's heal all our wounds. I knew it was useless with him. We were just two different people,
Mhm.
very different vibrations. And I got to a place where I just didn't need that from him anymore. I
Mm.
let him be him. Even when Michael and I went and knocked on the door 2 years ago and he's like, oh, did we remember to put a picture of David up?
Oh, jeez.
I just love that was his sense of humor. And then he's talking about, he always had a problem with weight gain. I put on weight during COVID and he was talking about, oh, he's gained weight again. And that's just who my dad is. He's obsessed with being thin, and 2 of his 3 children are not. So, oh well. And there was just things like that. And I was very at peace with that. There was nothing triggering there at all. The only thing that I was triggered by was that when he died, he didn't bother leaving anything to his 2 sons. And I don't
Oh.
mean I didn't need his money or, that's my stepmother's, to live on and all that stuff. I just meant, something special that he wanted his older son or his middle son to have. His daughter is my half sister. And he just didn't. And that bothered me for a second. I'm like, wow, he didn't even care enough to try to like leave us something to remember him by. And it bothered me for a second. And then I said, whoop, there's the thing.
Mm.
There's what's in the basement, because I felt a little trip, not too far down the spiral, but just a little dip. There it is. Why do I need this man to leave me anything? He delivered me into physical. He played his role.
Right.
That's all he owes me. The stream has said that over and over again. Your parents owe you nothing more than your trip into physical. Everything else is your duality from there on out, or your contrast for the Abraham folks. And that's what he did. And so I detuned that. And then my stepmother, after I detuned that, she said, "Did you want anything of his?" I said, "Well, he had this really cool Omega watch when I was a kid. And if you want to give that to, I'll take his Omega watch." And I never thought about it again. The other day she mentioned it. I'm like, I'll just send it whenever or don't, and I'll get it the next time I'm there. It doesn't matter. It's so detuned now. But how cool to find that one little nugget of something that was still there.
Yeah.
Identify it, detune it, and move on.
I love the way you phrase that too. How cool it is to find it.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a spin out about the book. We just published the book. The official date was December 1st. And I can be very type A and very impatient. And I've definitely worked on detuning this a lot, but I return to it a lot with things. And so I've spent 5 years writing the book. With Katerina and I have spent 5 years writing the book, I should say. And I was so eager to have that first review come in, because she talks about in book marketing how you need to have reviews right up front. That's just so important in the rankings on Amazon, that you got to have all these reviews. I said, well, I'll let everybody know that we published the book and the reviews are appreciated. But it's a 475-page book. Yep. So no one's going to read it, overnight and write a review. I just have to be patient. But still, I just knew that first great review was going to come in. Well, within 24 hours of the publication, the first review popped up, and it was not a good review. It was this 3-star review from this person that obviously didn't even read the book, because he was just saying, I hate these kinds of books that are just trying to get you to take their programs and all this stuff. And I'm like, we addressed that like in the introduction of the book. And you didn't even read the damn book, and you're writing a review because you were triggered by it. And then I caught myself and realized, well, I'm being triggered right now. So there it is. And there's my exercise in patience, and Michael's like, you need to practice what you teach, step away, and just let this, I hear that from him, every couple of weeks. Sure. Remember to practice what you teach. He's a very good accountability partner in all of this, that, hey, you do this so well all the time, but every once in a while, you step in it. And that's because I'm down the spiral when I do. I'm sitting there being impatient, needing reviews. And we know if you need something, the universe is always going to answer with more need.
Yes.
Here's your review. You still want reviews?
No.
I'm like, no, I'm good, whatever. And then we got all these great reviews after that, which was nice. But yeah, it was really funny.
It's also a reminder to be specific about what you're asking for.
That's true. I didn't just say, well, how arrogant of me to assume that all my reviews are going to be 5.
Going to be 5-star, right?
How could you not love TYA? Come on.
Yeah, actually, the way I look at it is, if I haven't published a book in a while, but whether it be a book or something you're selling on Amazon or whatever else, when you're looking for those reviews, I actually hope for like 4-star. I know that sounds weird, and I don't mean a single 4-star. I mean a 4-star average. Because
Katerina says if you have all 5-star reviews, it looks inauthentic. That yes,
it does.
And in the podcast, the book, all of that, we always get some negative reviews and people that are triggered. And I'm fine with it overall, because overall, most people are appreciating what we're doing. But it's kind of like your report card. Did I do the job that I think I did? Is it appreciated by the audience? Or is there something I don't want to lose that part of me. I don't want to be so woo-woo and out there that I don't still have that human, I'm doing this to serve humanity, and that's my ego wanting to serve humanity. Source isn't guiding me to do that. Source is saying, you know how to allow Source in a way that a lot of people never allow, and you've taught yourself to write it and speak it. And it's something that everybody has access to, but you are unique in that way. But there is no guidance to go out and preach the gospel. There's no guidance to go out and convert people to this. It's to offer it because it's being summoned by the collective asking for people who are studying this sort of thing. And that's what makes it flow. That's why in channeling, I used to say coming on this show was fantastic, because you take live questions, and some of the off the wall questions that you would get were some of the best moments. Because you remember the thing about magnetism?
Yes. Well, I brought that one up actually.
That was such a cool question because
Yeah.
I had never even thought about it before, never thought to ask it, or no one else did. And then the answer that came out was just like, oh my God, that's incredible. And then more came out about it. I think I did a whole article about it after that, like perfect attraction and perfect repulsion. And, exact doesn't really attract exact. It's like attracts like. And there's a reason for that, because if you have two exacts and you bring them together, nothing new is being created. And we see a physical example of that in how two like poles don't attract. They do the opposite of that. They repel.
Right, which is what magnetism.
And you brought that out. I would have never thought probably to ask that question or anything like that.
The funny thing was I'd actually thought about asking that the one time I went to an Abraham conference, and for whatever reason, and I'm certain Abraham was waiting for me to ask the question. The reason I'm certain about it is it was at the very, very beginning. I had my question, and Abraham was saying, if you're holding back, ask the question now. And there was silence. He said, no, ask the question right now. And I'm sitting there real quiet. There's no way I was going to ask the question, but I could tell they were talking to me saying, like, ask the damn question. And I wasn't sure why I held back then, but I realized it later on. I think it's because I wanted to ask the stream. I want to ask the David flavor rather than the Esther flavor. Because I asked you after I had that experience. And I loved the way that the stream expressed it. I mean, you just described it really, really nicely, because it was confusing to me. How is it that, if you have two magnets and you have the two north poles of the magnets and you point them at each other, they push up, they don't come together, they push apart. How is that? Where's like attracts like and all that? I didn't understand it. But
like and exact are different things. I do see a question from Janet about
oh yeah, let's bring that in.
If you're triggered by something, I'm doing my job. Thank you. That's probably true. And how to detune. So the how to detune is we detune by appreciating. Source is pure appreciation of all things. And so when you view any topic through the eyes of source, and you have that in you, we all come equipped that way. We're all beings of source in pure appreciation. And it is putting the cart before the horse. We know in law of attraction, we do that all the time, right? We put the cart before the horse. We be the thing that we want to be, and then it becomes reality for us. So we do the same thing. We appreciate something, even if we have no idea how in the world we could ever appreciate it. Because when I talk about that, inevitably someone's going to say, well, I could never appreciate X, Y, Z. How in the hell can you appreciate that?
Right.
Well, don't start with the worst of the worst. You work your way toward it. And you start with a practice of active appreciation. And you don't have to be triggered to know what your transgressors are. Your life's transgressors are the things that have shaped your belief system. And if you think about your limiting beliefs, think about the origin of your limiting beliefs. If you grew up poor and you still struggle with money, go back to the root of that. That's a big thing that we do in boot camp. Go to the root of, I still struggle with money to this day because I was fed a constant diet of money is hard to come by. Money is the root of all evil. Anyone that has money is cheating and lying to get it. And, the world is so messed up that we're in this commerce system and everything should be free, but we're not in that system. So what do? You appreciate the system that you're in. The people at the top of the wealth pyramid love the system that we're in. And the people suffering at the bottom that are all complaining about it, they're propping up the top. And I see people on social media all the time, because I'm on TikTok a lot, eat the rich. Eat the rich. Well, that mindset is never going to propel you up that pyramid. You're down there complaining, and you're creating the base of that pyramid. And until you learn to love the system, and that doesn't mean that we can't change the system. Yes. But you're never going to change it by demonizing it, because that which we demonize, we give life to, and there's evidence of that everywhere.
Yeah. In fact, I'm personally involved in a project I've been trying to work on for the last 2.5 years, trying to make progress on, and I've got some detuning to do, because there are aspects of it that don't work out the way I want them to. But exactly to that point, I'm trying to do something that will help, not by itself, but help to make that shift in that system. Not because I hate the system, but because I want to see it change for the better. It's a big deal.
I have a question about trust.
We have a lot of questions about trust, but I love yours. Go ahead and tell it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot. Is it, okay, there's multiple questions here. How, question mark, just wide open, how And is it just appreciating the moments when you're in the downward spiral of like judgment or need or fear, or those things in that ego side of things, and that will naturally shift you over to the higher mind or the source mind, as you had called it. Like how do you walk that journey of trust?
I love that you said walk the journey, because it is that. That's why I created a practice. You practice yoga, and certainly the first time you go to yoga, yeah, I used to go to yoga all the time. And the first time you go to yoga, you're terrible at it. And then if you keep doing it and you keep practicing, you get better and better and better. And if you have a great coach, they can help you get better at it. So it's practice. TYA is a practice. That's why when I start talking about this stuff and someone hears appreciate all things, well, God, you can't appreciate what's going on in the Middle East right now. And you can't appreciate homelessness and poverty. You can, but don't start. That's your ego trying to, quote unquote, protect you from growth by saying, well, you can't possibly do this. Don't start there. Start with smaller things and start a practice of appreciation and gratitude and detuning. And then the more you practice, the more is revealed to you. And every time I've thought I've hit this ceiling of enlightenment, and I've done that a few times in my life, wow, I really get it all now. As soon as I think that, I'm going to create something that's going to completely shatter that, send me down my spiral, and completely unravel everything, because I realize, oh, wait, I'm still human. I'm still physical. No human is perfect. I don't believe in gurus. I think that's all bullshit. I am going to be knocked back down to reality by polarity. We're in this wonderful environment that's going to always keep us moving. So the goal of TYA is not to be up the spiral at the top in abundance and joy and source energy all the time. But if you've ever looked at a chart of the financial market, especially like the US stock market, you'll see that it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. But over time, it always expands and goes up generally. It's always going up, even though it's going up and down. Well, that's a sign of how energy actually flows in the universe, but certainly how we measure it in our world, because we measure that so closely. Our lives can be that as well. So we're going up, we're going down, we're having spin outs, things work, things don't. But when you return to trust and you solve the problem and you move through the experience and realize, wow, the only reason that was a bad experience is because this matrix that I live in has taught me to judge it as such. If I just had major surgery, on October 11th, I had a 7-hour surgical procedure on my back, spinal fusion, long recovery. I'm still in recovery from it. And I started, I geek out on things. So I will go on YouTube and I want to hear people it's called the PLIF, PLIF. And I had this surgery, and most of the stuff on YouTube was like, oh, it's terrible. It's awful. It's the worst experience ever. And I just stopped. I'm like, no, I don't need to see this. I'm committing to have this surgery. It's like $200,000 or $300,000 procedure. It's a big deal. I'm not going to give any of that power. And so sure enough, I manifested an amazing surgeon. I had an amazing experience going into surgery. I've never had surgery before. I've never stayed in the hospital before. I got wheeled into that room, which could be very scary, this weird apparatus that they were going to turn me upside down in, and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, hey, here we go. This is what we're doing now. I get out of surgery, and I ended up going to this luxury recovery center that I had pre-planned, and it was like staying in a 5-star hotel. And I had, even though I had experiences like having a catheter and things like that, that aren't, oh my gosh, this is fun. I looked at it as, hey, now I know what that's like. My father used to complain about that because he was hospitalized a lot. It wasn't the end of the world. I know what it's like. Am I looking to have it again? No, but I know what it's like. It's an experience. And for me, I'm not going to come out of it and say it was terrible. It was awful. It was the worst thing ever. It was a really cool experience. I now know what it's like to stay in the hospital. I now know what it's like to have surgery. I now know what it's like to, have all of this nerve stuff going on in my body as a result of my spine being manipulated. I know what it's like to have to sleep in a, power reclining chair because I can't sleep anywhere else, and to have to use a walker and not be able to bend over. All these experiences, I now know what it's like. I've expanded my consciousness in the having of experiences. And if I'm not judging it as bad, it's not bad.
Right.
It's just a set of experiences. All of life can be that. Including losing your home, including a lot of things. And I know people want to, rush to, well, what if someone, close to you dies or something like that? I always share everything as I experience it. If you listen to the Stream of David podcast, if I have a spin out in some way or something happens, I'm going to be the first to come on and say, hey, this is what happened. my house burned down, my partner left, my this happened, my that happened, whatever it is that's going on, I'm always going to share it. And if I go down the spiral, I'm going to tell you I went down the spiral, but I'm going to tell you what I did with it after that. Because I do think all of humanity can eventually move toward operating like that. And we'll be a very sophisticated species when we do that.
Which is a very interesting contrast to what is often touted as the ideal. Many people will tout the ideal of, it's got to be world peace.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Got to be everybody.
A lot of spirituality is all about that, right? We're going to new earth, and we're all going to agree all the time, which means we're all going to be the same vibration all the time.
Yeah.
I say bullshit makes the world go round. That sounds like more bullshit to me. I don't think that that's going to happen. We're ego-driven beings. We have different desires, and being ego-driven, we want to survive. And sometimes surviving means you got to step on somebody else, whether you mean to or not. You just do.
Or you've got to get in line. Step in the shit. I mean, that's just also part of it. I mean, the shit's on the ground that you're going to step on.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that there's somebody else out there right now, promoting exactly what I'm promoting, and someone's going to choose their stuff, and someone's going to choose mine. I'm not actively stepping on them, but my ego wants to build a better mousetrap for sure. Yeah. I want to serve the audience in a better way than has been done, or why do it?
Right.
It's all been done before. So if I don't think I'm doing it better, which is my ego, then why would I bother to do it at all?
It's part of that. All like that. It's part of that experience. It's why we have that duality to come into, so we can experience that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, am I actively going to try to sabotage some? Of course not. That's low vibe crap. I don't need to do that. That's not trusting my abundance. I don't need to sabotage anyone. But when I got into the spiritual business, I'm going off on a tangent again. I was amazed at how much low vibe, nasty corporate stuff exists in this industry. That's why we publish our own books. I don't want any part of other spiritual publishing companies.
Companies that shall not be named.
Yeah. Well, when you get on the inside, you're like, okay, this is just like the furniture business that I was in for 25 years. It's no different. It just has a different facade,
But I mentioned that because it occurs to me that for me, the ideal isn't whether or not we're all thinking the same or we're all enlightened or whatever. It's how many people have acquired what we call here the TYA tools and are putting them to use in their life. To me, that's exciting. Because it doesn't really matter where they are, up, down, whatever. They know how to get where they want to go.
Again, there's a satisfaction in knowing that what you've devoted your life to is helping people.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, that's like you said, that's why the ego wants to do these things. We want
and the people that are celebrated as the most successful among us, often, at least they started that way by solving a big problem.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos solved a big problem in my life. I never want to leave the house shop.
Yeah, I was looking at my own purchases through Amazon. I was thinking, wow, I've really become dependent upon this sucker. It's
I don't know if there's a way to see how much you spend in a year on Amazon. I would be terrified to see how much. The bad thing is that you dream, I need this. Boom, I've ordered it now. Where in the past, if I really have to drive to a store and buy, I'll probably talk myself out of most things, right? Except the bare necessities. Now it's like today I decided I needed a popover pan for Christmas.
Okay.
Because I'll make popovers once in my life, probably.
I don't even know what a popover is.
Oh, Google a popover. I have made them before, but I've made them in muffin pans. But it's like a little, it's a batter that you put in a really hot oven in some sort of fat, and it puffs up into this big puffy bread-like thing, and it's kind of hollow. But they're really
kind of like a pastry without the sugar. Think of it that way.
Yeah, you probably could put sugar in, I guess. I don't know if it'd react differently, but it's a savory. It's a savory thing. It's kind of like a roll that you would have with dinner, but it's mostly air. So I convinced myself it's not as calorie laden.
I'm Googling
sure it is
later.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. We've covered everything from, dealing with the father's death to, okay, what are we going to do for a pastry today? Or is it going to be a popover? Yeah. I mean, just cover the realm. I love it. So, well, we're almost done with our hour here. Once again, congratulations on getting the book out. I mean, this is kind of like the obvious question. So, forgive me for asking the obvious one. You've been working on this for 5 years. What's next?
Well, what's next is I will write, there's a couple of more books that I'm kind of starting to work on, just different things. I will never write anything like this again, this thick and this big and all inclusive. This is, again, it's the TYA Bible. I intend to spend the rest of my life promoting this. We
Okay.
are going to do a workbook companion to this, so that
Okay.
you can read the book. And then I do recommend now to do the paperback version, because it will be like a workbook for you that you'll want to tab and go back to again and again and again, because there's just so much in here. But
Right.
we are going to do an actual workbook version, and then I've already started writing a streamism TYA book where it has all the streams little sayings. If you ever read back in the 90s, there was something called Life's Little Instruction Book.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And it was these little musings, and you could open it to any page and just read
Right.
and just get a dose of those musings. Well, I'm doing the stream version of that. So all of the
Okay.
stream musings I'm putting together in a small little, bathroom book, if you will, that you can just pull open to any page and kind of get a little dose of stream. So those are things I'm working on.
So is the workbook, like, is it divided up into modules like the boot camp is, or is it just divided up
Yeah,
based
and
on?
my partner Michael, who has been a professor at the college level and he's a psychologist, he's actually going to be heavily involved in the workbook part of this.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So we'll do that. I still have the Stream of David podcast, which we were coming off of hiatus post surgery. We put our first episode out this week with Matt. Matt.
Fantastic. I know
and I
Matt,
still have the TYA Practice podcast, which I will resume within a couple of months probably. And then we will do seminars and workshops and lives and all that stuff. We'll start that up again.
And your publishing company.
And the publishing company, which will publish all of that stuff, and we'll publish other things too. But we really need to kind of cut our teeth on our own stuff before we start trying to publish other people's stuff. But we want to get there for sure.
But I'm curious to know what that's going to be. I mean, obviously we have to kind of wait and see. But I'm wondering who are they going to bring on board to publish? That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, well, we've had other people come through the TYA world that want to do things that are not exactly TYA, but are sort of TYA related or centric. That we would love to help publish. Why not pool our knowledge and stay out of that mainstream publishing world where they take your work and completely change it, which is what I didn't want to happen. One of the things, the reason I decided to self-publish the first book is Katerina, one of her favorite books was Conversations with God, but she says, that was a whole different book originally, and that it got published from a mainstream publisher and really reworked, to be what it is now, which made it a huge success, but also changed the core message. And I didn't want I would rather reach fewer people with an authentic core message for me than have something completely glossed over and changed and turned into, the God practice or whatever you want to call it, the Jesus practice.
It makes sense that it was reworked that way. I didn't know it was. Now,
I'm not. I mean, what he did was right for him in that message.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'm sure is still serving lots of people. The stream's message though is not politically correct, and they've never been about that, because again, they appreciate all things. And I don't know how you would approach a mainstream publisher and say, hey, I want to publish a book that says you can appreciate anything. And that really triggers people.
But I guess my point is, I would love to know what Neil Donald Walsh's original Conversations of God was. I want to know what the one was that was edited out.
Yeah, I don't want to claim to speak for. I don't know, but from what she said, it was more authentic, channeled stuff. God wasn't part of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
interesting.
Wow.
I want to get a copy of that.
Think about what a cool title that is, though. Conversations with God. Who doesn't want to hear from God?
Right. Yeah. But I mean, like with The Secret, I mean, when I heard that the original Secret had Esther Hicks in it and she got edited out, I had to get a copy of it. I mean,
I didn't know that.
And the story was they wanted Esther to basically say, everything that you do from here on out, we're going to own if you're going to be in this book. And she sort of said, well, I don't need you. And it turned out to be true. And they both turned out to be successful.
Right. Yeah.
The Secret is a great gateway drug to all of this.
It is.
It doesn't go deep, but it definitely grabs you and gets you thinking. And a lot of people will throw it down and say this doesn't work, but others will be intrigued and then move on to other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And as it turned out, when I finally did get my copy of the original Secret and watched it, it was actually like, oh, that's all. It was kind of a bit of a letdown.
But it's surface enough to kind of get people into it. And then you do need to go elsewhere. A lot of people, I will say, a very common path that I see is a lot of people will read The Secret, they'll be into Abraham, and then they'll need something more, and they find their way to what we do.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that I've also found fascinating over the years is we've had more and more people coming onto the show who are channels. In fact, I'm reminding right now what we had a episode, one of the last times you were on, David. You and Jody Lynn were kind of doing dual channeling, which was kind of fun. But as I've had more and more people onto the show who are very good at expressing what they're receiving, I'm really fascinated by the different flavors that come through, in part because of the duality of it, or the contrast of it. I like the Abraham term in this particular case, because on the one hand, I hear the similarities, and on the other hand, I hear the differences. And I know the differences are the flavors of the person who is, channeling the message.
Being filtered through a human consciousness, so there's always going to be some human there. My goal has always been to take me out of it as much as possible, and to allow it to flow, and not be afraid of what's coming through. And that's where people get really triggered by what we share sometimes, because again, you're talking about authentic appreciation of all things. The Matrix is exactly the opposite of that.
Right.
So it really goes against all of that. And I am here though for the people that are really far enough into their journey to where they're ready to at least wrap their mind around the concept, even if you don't start there. But eventually I'll get to where I can appreciate everything as soon as I read about it. I've resubscribed to the New York Times now. I read the New York Times every day.
Cool.
Because it doesn't trigger me.
That's
it doesn't trigger me. I can read about anything that's going on in the world in appreciation of exactly what is, which has been a long time to get to that place.
Yeah, I'm almost there. I'm not 100% there, but I'm really close. I'm like 99% of the time there. I have to keep my antenna up to make sure. Well,
if it drags your vibe down, you I would say, if you want your vibe to be high and you want to live a joyous, abundant life, you need to turn that stuff off for a while.
Yeah, and that's what I do. I take a mini vacation. Okay, I got to stay away from this for a bit. I just have to walk away, come back a little bit later on after I got myself in a better space. But it's really interesting how these tools that you and others have taught, they're so good at helping us to maintain that perspective. It's really cool. So Jody Lynn, I got to do one more time what I always do, because you're always so good at tying things together, right? So, you got so much material to draw on here. What's your takeaway?
There's many, but I want to start with the reminder from David and the book that you've written and all of the TYA magic, I will call it, that we're here to experience expanding consciousness. And I'm going to lean on the visual that you gave us earlier, because I think it's so incredible, of the stock market. When you look at it or your life and you're zoomed into the everyday, it is up and down and it can be quite tumultuous. But when we take a step back and we zoom out and look over the whole picture, it's upward bound. And that gives us the opportunity to see that this moment might not be perfect. Nothing is perfect. But over time, we can appreciate the ups and downs and see how the trajectory is positive overall.
Really good. Yeah, I love that. It's a great way to bring it all to a close. So, David, once again, thank you for joining us. And we're going to have you back in a couple weeks, aren't we? You're coming back.
I think I booked 2 for this month. Why not?
Yeah. So this is part 1. Part 2 coming up in a few weeks. So stay tuned to that. And thank you all who jumped in on the live stream. Thank you for the questions. That was really great. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.